new features in Bareos 24.
Yes, thank you very much, Stefan. So yeah, let's go on. I hope that I have some interesting information for you. So Bareos 24 has been released end of last year, and there we had some interesting new features. I would like to present today the highlights of Bareos 24 and the features that we plan for Bareos 25 that I think are probably most interesting for the users. So in my point of view, the most interesting new feature in Bareos 24 is a new dedupable storage backend. So what is this about? Let's first have a look at the standard storage format that Bareos uses to store the data in the archives. So the standard format is the same for tape and for file. And it was originally designed for tapes so that it is possible to stream. It does not require to have random access on the storage. It is designed to use the storage space efficiently, and what is most important is that it can be opened without with a command line tool without needing the rest of the infrastructure of the system. So for emergency restore, as long as you do have the volume, you can still recover data from it, like from a zip file, without requiring all the other installation or the catalog database. This is especially very useful to do an emergency recovery of the system itself, for example. Yeah, the storage format consists of records and blocks, and these records and blocks have headers, including checksums and other data. This is very useful to make sure that the data that is being recovered is correct and does not have any bit failures. But unfortunately, this also leads to the fact that even backing up the same data 2 times looks on the block layer different. And this makes it very hard for deduplication solutions to understand that the same data has been backed up twice, and so that it can be deduped. Here you see if you do the storage into a subdirectory, volume stored by Bareos looks like this. So there's a subdirectory, and there you just have one file that contains all the data that is stored in this volume. In this example here is the volume with the name full001. Now let's have a look at the dedupable storage format. To avoid the problem that the same data being backed up twice looks different, the dedupable storage format writes into multiple files, writing the data on the original block borders in order to make the same data be written in the same way that the deduping file system, for example, can recognize that 2 times the same block has been written, and so the deduplication can do its work and save a lot of space. As different deduplication solutions use different block sizes, we also can configure the storage format to use the required block size in order to optimally be able to be deduped. And here's, for example, how this looks. If you have if you use the dedupable backend and you write into the volume, then what really is written onto disk looks like this. So there's different files there. The config file, for example, contains the configuration of this volume. So, for example, the block size. Then there's a file that contains the unaligned data. So, for example, if blocks have not been fully written, and there's the aligned data format where the blocks are written on block borders, so that the deduplication can optimally dedupe the volumes. Another very important enhancement is the separate Python process that we introduced to run file daemon plugins. So what is this all about? The original plugin architecture of Bareos to use Python plugins was like this. So the file daemon loads the plugin code into the same process, which then starts a Python interpreter to execute the plugin code. For every job, a Python subinterpreter is started, and everything runs in the process space of the file daemon. Unfortunately, not very much people use subinterpreters, and all interpreters share the global interpreter log, which showed up to be a problem if you are running many jobs at the same time in parallel, because some Python modules are not able to be run in parallel in multiple threads. So the new plugin architecture looks like this. So instead of running the Python plugin in the same process, we now have a two-process approach. The file daemon itself starts a sub-process where it communicates via a gRPC, and every job gets its own sub-process running a full Python interpreter that has not the problems that I just told you that arise when you're running multiple threads in sub-interpreters. So the very nice thing about it is that the API is the same, so you can run all existing Python plugins in a own sub-process without having to change anything. So that's the big advantage of it. The third important new feature in Bareos 24 is the just-in-time reservation. So what is this about? The original reservation logic in Bareos tried to reserve the required devices very early. So originally, even before the pre-job scripts were executed, and depending on how long, for example, the pre-job run or other things can delay the time until even data starts to come in to be written, the devices have been blocked for a very long time, even before any data came in. This is especially a big problem for tape drives, which are very expensive. So the tape drives have been locked and could not be used by other jobs when maybe no data or only a little data came in to be written. So the improvement of the just-in-time logic is like this. So the device is only reserved really when data comes in to be written. So no matter how long a job takes before, the device is free for any other job only until data is written to the drive. Yeah, that was about the device reservation. And the next improvement that we introduced in Bareos 24 is that we are now able to use warm tapes. So warm is the acronym for write once, read many. What is this about? It is about being able to do backups that cannot be altered afterwards, so that you can guarantee that the backup is exactly the same as it was originally. What is the technical problem we had with warm tapes? So the warm tapes make technically sure that it is not possible to overwrite any blocks on the tape. But unfortunately, the volume labeling logic in Bareos 23 overwrote the same blocks 2 times, because when the volume labeling was done, first a pre-label was written, which was then overwritten by a final label. And this mechanism does not work on warm tapes because the second overwrite of the same block is inhibited by the warm logic. So the solution of this problem is that instead of writing a pre-label and overwriting it in the second phase, we now changed the labeling process to only be a one-phase approach. So the final label is written on the first write, and now warm tapes can be used, but we use the same approach also for every other tape. So a quick preview of Bareos 25, what we're just currently working or at least are evaluating. So one thing we are looking into is to create a Proxmox backup plugin. Proxmox is a virtualization solution that probably many of you heard of. And we are currently working on finding out what is the optimal way of getting a good solution to do backups of the Proxmox virtual machines. The second thing we're looking into is to also support the Hyper-V virtualization solution of Microsoft. Unfortunately, that is not so straightforward to be done because Microsoft has multiple APIs to make backups of Hyper-V virtual machines. They have different properties. Some of them can only do backups under certain circumstances. So we are currently also evaluating what is the right API to be versatile and make backups of Hyper-V virtualization. Yeah, that's it. That's the technical overview that I prepared for today. Does anybody have any questions about it?
Yeah, maybe a short remark from my side why we think that warm tape support is important, as if you want to protect for ransomware, we think that the most secure way to do this is either use warm media or air gapping, which requires tape as well, but then the tapes need to be taken out of the tape library and stored in another place. So yeah, any questions? We can also
so if not, I just saw that a new poll came in. So if you have time, please, would be nice if you give us some
feedback.
Your answers and feedback on the polls, please.
Yeah, that would be really helpful for us too. Yeah, and anyway, at the end of the session, we have planned some time for Q&A. So, and also feel free to ask questions anytime in the chat if you want. So if we have no questions regarding new features in Bareos 24 or the roadmap, then I am happy to hand over to Shlomo Shapiro, presenting Relax and Recover. Shlomo, please. Don't forget to unmute.
Yeah.
I was double muted. Sorry for that. I also brought some slides along. And I see there may be some more questions about the Bareos update. So do you want to talk about that now or later?
Xen, maybe, yeah, okay. Thanks for the remark for the just-in-time reservation. And the question is, what about to backup Xen virtualization? Maybe, I think, Andreas, can you say a word about that? I think you looked into it. Or Philip?
Yeah, so Andreas, do you want to say something or should I?
I really can't say that much. So technically it's possible. But right now we are evaluating how many people are actually using it, because from what we got on feedback, it's a lot less common nowadays than Proxmox and Hyper-V. So it's nothing we focused on yet.
So are you using Patrick Treichgräber, I think, did ask the question. So are you using Xen from Citrix, or are you using XCP-ng, or what are you currently using, please? XCP-ng, yeah, that's so yeah. So we definitely already looked a bit into that, but yes, I think XCP-ng mostly is used in France. That at least is the impression we have. So of course we try to first meet the requirements of what we think most people are looking for, but of course XCP-ng also is something we would look into if we get more feedback about people using it, or if the other things are completely developed and work well, then also maybe we look into that, because yes,
Yeah.
it definitely exists, but yes.
Yeah, thanks.
the
Thanks. Yeah.
That is
Sorry,
one of
thank-
the reasons why we do these expert circles, to get feedback what people or what our customers are using. And yeah, okay, now I hear at least one customer is using this. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and as far as I know, technically it's also now possible to do blockwise incremental backups using something similar to VMware change block tracking or KVM 30-bitmap. So yeah, hopefully if we get more interest, if we see more interest, then yeah, probably something can happen. Yeah, then Shlomo, please start your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. You can see my slides, right?
Yes.
Good. So maybe we start from a quick question, which is very simple. Who has already made use of Relax and Recover, or heard about it at least? So I see
you
some
can
raised
use the raise your hand just.
Thank
It's
you.
normally also commonly used for I want to speak, but yeah, in this case we just use it for.
I must say you're warming my heart here, because even though Relax and Recover exists for nearly 20 years, it's still a bit of a hidden thing apparently. And I'm always happy to speak with actual real users who can then tell me what is annoying and of course also what you like. So I hope there will be a moment where we can do that. For everybody else, Relax and Recover is a way how we can automate the recovery for Linux systems with Bareos. And this is essentially the story I want to tell you today with a little bit more details. We have a live demo, and I hope you will all walk away with, oh, wow, I didn't know I can actually do that. And maybe tomorrow you'll be all trying it out. So what's the problem to solve? And I think that's really not so difficult. Imagine you have a server, let's say it's running Linux, and eventually the server blows up. And blowing up can be anything. Somebody steals it, somebody installs malware, an update goes wrong. I mean, there are many things how things can go wrong. So you, of course, are a very prudent admin. You have a spare server sitting in your basement. And the question is, what do you do with a spare server? And if it's a real server, you have to do a lot of manual steps to get it up and running. And it starts from low-level hardware RAID and whatever, and goes up into OS setup, applications, configurations, and eventually you need to bring back the data. A lot of stuff, and imagine you try to do that at 3 o'clock at night, and I don't like doing such things at 3 o'clock at night. So I early on started to think about how can we automate the disaster recovery. And the goals for my automation approach is always something like hands-off, zero knowledge, kind of, the janitor should be able to recover a server. That's the level of knowledge required that I personally would like to bring to the table at 3 o'clock at night when I'm called in to recover a server. And of course, quality is important. So how can I test that my disaster recovery procedure would actually work? And for that, of course, again, automation is key to success. If we have all that, then recovering a server is actually really, really simple. Push a button, wait a bit, and you're done. And why is this important? I think it's worth to talk about the mean time to restore service. And let's say you installed bad software or bad configuration update, and it didn't happen on one, but on 1,000 servers. We have a data center, automation, we deploy an update, and suddenly everything is deleted. Because, well, we didn't test the update enough, or the update behaved unexpectedly. So the scale out of the problem is actually what is painful. Or what happens if an OS update goes wrong? What happens if you delete actual data on your central storage or on a lot of servers where you have local storage? And of course, virtualization just makes it easier to delete stuff. And what happens if you lose your data center? All these are questions where disaster recovery is important and where Relax and Recover as a tool can actually help and make your life easier. Let's look a little bit into a Linux system and understand where exactly bare metal restore with relax and recover comes into play. So for me, a server has essentially these parts. We have here the configuration, which is like the top level thing. And below that, we have operating system and application. And eventually we have data for the application. Now, if I look at the change frequency, typically the configuration changes the least. It can remain static for a long time. Then we have the operating system that changes more frequently with updates. We have the application that gets deployed from time to time. And typically the data is the thing that changes all the time, like minute by minute, second by second. So looking at the change frequency, I can already tell you that relax and recover as a tool helps you with things that change not so often. And backup software helps you with things that change frequently. And that's the distribution of duties between backup software and relax and recover. So I always believe in using the best tool for the job. And here the job is restore or recovery. So for data, you will always use a specialized backup tool like Bareos. And for everything else, you either have automation in place to cover it, or you can use ReaR, how relax and recover is abbreviated, to solve the problem. And that's actually the magic of the tool, that it covers everything that backup tooling doesn't cover. So specifically, we go from manual to automated operations, and we look at the entire value chain from backup over restore into disaster recovery itself. And we cover all that with relax and recover. The name is the product, is what we try to do for you. And I'm sure you know this already, but backups are not enough. Even if you walk around and tell, we have backups for everything, I'm willing to bet we can find something in a little corner of your data center that's not covered by backup. So I try to come in and say, let's try to find a way how we cover everything and not think about backup as something that we need to actually take care of. It should be ubiquitous. It should be always there for everybody. And I also know that manually recovering things takes forever. So I firmly believe that complete system backups are the way to go forward. I don't want to know about the details of a specific server. I just cover it all. This knowledge of like what to exclude from a backup, that's way too much. And especially at scale, it's way too easy to make a human error even of excluding a directory that actually was important. So I believe that storage is cheap, my time is expensive, I back up everything, and I don't care about the details. Also, for disaster recovery, we need to do more than just having something on paper. We actually need automation that helps us to scale out and up our disaster recovery to cover all systems, all configurations, and all environments, and that somehow guarantees that in the case of need, we can recover our systems. And for me, the only way how we can guarantee anything in IT, at least, is testing it on a regular basis. Just, try it out. If it works, I can believe it. If it doesn't work, I can fix it. That's why, for me, automation is really key to go into repeatability and testability for disaster recovery procedures. So here we come to ReaR, the open source tool for disaster recovery. Very important, 100% open source. There's no commercial organization owning it or behind it. It's true open source, and we're on GitHub, and that's it. We support 17 different backup solutions, commercial and open source. And I can guarantee you that you won't find any other tool on the market that solves disaster recovery with that breadth and depth of integration. And obviously, our mission, our goal is we fully automate everything related to disaster recovery for Linux and also cover bare metal restore. So maybe I can take you through a few design concepts to help you use disaster recovery with ReaR, simplify your processes, and also put the emphasis where it actually matters. There's a basic tenet every file on a Linux computer must be stored in backup. That's what I said initially, like, I don't care about the details, everything has to be covered. ReaR creates a bootable rescue media, and we call that output. So the result of running ReaR is a boot media that you can use to recover your server. We automate everything. So from hard disk configuration, even down to the RAID configuration, up to file system networking, everything is automated. And we use the backup tool of your choice, like Bareos, to restore the files from backup, because number one, we said every file has to be saved in backup. We take care of bare metal. So from switching on a new computer, we boot it up and recover it. After the recovery, you reboot and you're done. And the system will come up and actually work in production. There's no manual post-processing configuration, whatever. And then, of course, you can either go back to sleep or celebrate. That's, in a nutshell, what Relax and Recover does. If we look at the details, there's a clear separation of duties between backup software and ReaR. So the backup software has to take care of all the hard problems around how to create a consistent backup of all the files. And typically, this is a really hard question where you need to like quiz down the file system, maybe stop an application, take an LVM snapshot, do a lot of hard things in a automation sense to take a good backup. ReaR comes and records how does your hardware look, your disk layout, file systems, networking, bootloader, everything that makes Linux actually work as a Linux system. And for the recovery, we turn it around. ReaR uses that information to rebuild your new server from scratch to look exactly like the original one. And then it uses the backup software to restore all the files. For most backup softwares, we support both restoring from the last backup and a previous backup with a point-in-time selection. With a question, of course, or you can even precede that. So, quick recap, you have two things. You have the backup of your data and a rescue image that you create with ReaR. And then, obviously, the backup goes continuously, as often as you need it. You use ReaR to create the rescue image when you need it. Often it's enough to do it once a week, once a month, after installing OS updates, after distributing new configuration. Depends a little bit on how your system is run. Or often also people run ReaR as a pre-job for the actual backup. So whenever the backup runs, it creates a new rescue image. Your server blows up, you bring a new one, you boot from the ReaR rescue image. It prepares the server to actually receive the data, uses the backup software to restore all the files, reboots, and you're done. That's the entire process. And the nice thing about Relax and Recover, this is fully automated. Now, we talked about boot media, and unfortunately, a floppy disk isn't enough anymore. But you could use it to boot up IPXE for an automated PXE setup. Typically, users use either ISO images to boot them virtually or physically via a CD-ROM drive. If you go more into automation, you will end up using PXE boot, and then you have a fully automated PXE boot environment where you can just switch a server to recovery boot mode, which would then boot it from the ReaR rescue image appropriate for that server. What's important here is we always separate between boot media and backup data, although, of course, it is very convenient to also store the boot media with the backup data and use the backup system as a transportation mechanism to carry the boot media from the target server to the actual boot environment where you need to put it in. Maybe a few words about how to use ReaR. And in a nutshell, there are only 4 things you can do with ReaR, which is MK rescue, create a new rescue image, MK backup, create a new backup, and a new rescue image all together, bundled together. In the rescue system, you do ReaR recover, and you can do ReaR dump to look at the configuration. These are the main things, and trust me, everything else you'll barely ever need. There's a non-interactive mode if you don't want to be bothered with questions. There's all kind of special features like MK, Opal, PBA, if you like to do TCG Opal, booting with encrypted hard disks. You can actually use Relax and Recover to create a better pre-boot image than what you typically download from the Drive Trust Alliance. There's some other special features. They're well described in the documentation, so I won't go into them. By the way, we do care about security, which is why by default, ReaR will not expose operational secrets that you put in the configuration. But with the Expose Secrets option, you can make them visible for debugging purposes. If you find a bug there, please let us know. We put a lot of effort into making sure that ReaR doesn't break your trust with your secrets that you put into the system. If you haven't installed ReaR, it's actually quite simple. All Linux distributions have ReaR included. It just works. The only downside is some Linux distributions have a hard time updating ReaR to recent versions, which is why we recommend to actually download a distribution package from our GitHub releases page, which is automatically built. We have distro packages for all common distros. If something is missing, talk to me. We can, of course, create more distro packages if you need them. And of course, you can install ReaR from source or even run it without installation if you need to. How to configure ReaR? That's really simple. In the most common case, the only thing you need to tell ReaR is actually one thing, which is how the backup should happen. But there are a few files that you need to be aware of. We have two main configuration files, which is localconf and siteconf. The main difference is please use localconf only for manual editing. A ReaR package will, on upgrade, respect that. Please use siteconf for automated distribution of configuration files, for example, via RPM package or Ansible or whatever. No ReaR package will ever ship a site.conf file, and the local.conf file by default is empty. So the default distribution of ReaR is actually without configuration so that you can plug in your own without any conflict. To know what you can set, please look at the default conf, which is very, very long, and it has tons of descriptions describing every parameter and setting that you can use. Our configuration is actually bash, so you can use bash arrays. You must actually use bash arrays, and you can be very creative with how you write your configuration, even up to using dynamic configuration, which is computed in the file itself or maybe pulled in from somewhere else. We also support adding additional configuration files for special purposes. Very useful for testing, very useful for like temporary overrides, stuff like that. There are 4 variables you need to know. Backup, like I said. How do we do backup? If it's an internal backup, then you need to tell it where to put the backup, like an NFS share. Then output, obviously, like how do you want to get your disaster recovery boot media? And again, output URL, where to put it. That's it. Everything else is totally optional, and we try to auto-configure everything as much as possible. Let's look at a typical Bareos ReaR configuration. It's extremely complicated and really hard to remember because that's it, just one line. In the ideal case, you need only one line to configure ReaR for Bareos. And this is actually a great improvement that Jörg contributed, I think, 2 years ago, last year, with a revamped Bareos integration in ReaR, which automates all the things that previously had to be configured manually. There's a bit you need to do on the Bareos side, and we'll just show it in a second. If you need to, you can also set more things. By the way, we recommend with Bareos to store the ISO image with Bareos and use Bareos as the kind of vehicle to transport the ISO. But maybe you have another automated setup, then you would do it different. So if Bareos auto configuration fails, you can set the 3 additional parameters for the Bareos client, the file set, and the restore job. that's it, actually. That's all you need to do. Everything is fully automated. And here we actually said that we want to show you the live demo of how to do disaster recovery with ReaR. Jörg, I think that's your turn.
Okay, then maybe I can just show it. You all see my screen. I shared my full screen.
Yes.
Good. Okay, by the way, yeah, I got Debian 12 because I picked it to make my testing. It's a system that is configured to be backed up by Bareos and have a B console also installed here, which is only able to see its own jobs. That is a thing that we recommend when using ReaR. To have the B console on the system. And there we see we have a backup of this machine from yesterday evening at 9 o'clock. That's probably enough. And the backup job is called backup Bareos. Let's take a look at this. Show job. Backup. And there we see it's a standard job. We use the standard file set Linux all to back up all Linux files, the normal job configuration. But the only exception is that we have added a script here called update ReaR rescue, which should run before the job. And we will also take a look at this. Like Shlomo already said, we have to run ReaR make rescue from time to time. We could do this on every backup job, but then we would recreate a 200 megabytes large file on every backup or on every day. This is normally not necessary. So we do this on a full backup. So if backup level is full, then we recreate it because then we just replace the file by a new version of the file, which is the same size. Or otherwise, we do this every 7 days, just to make sure that we have a more or less recent version of the ReaR rescue boot image. It will then store this as lib ReaR output. There you see here it's also from yesterday. This is also fine. Okay, I made this, make this. Okay, so we have our backup, we have our rescue image. This is also backup, so everything is fine. We could recreate it, but now we only do the simulation. That's also something Shlomo already said. This is all based on bash snippets, I would call it. So a little bit of shellcode that are merged together so that it matches your systems. And the Bareos specific part is only here. I see 7. I think it's maybe 8 scripts that are specific to Bareos, like getting the file daemon from your running system with the configuration, things like this, and then patching it so that it's included on the rescue image, but only in restore only mode, so that it's not used to back up the rescue system, but just to be able to allow the restore. So everything quite nice. So we feel reasonably sure that the system will be fine. So we can just destroy it. I think removing this and removing this should pretty much destroy it. Yeah. Okay, yes, it seems to be automatic. Maybe try to reboot. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess the system is broken. I will maybe force a reset and see if it's come up. Yeah, no. Yeah, so it has found it, doesn't matter. So the system is broken and now we want to restore it. So here we have the web UI of the Bareos server, and then we can see our backup when we want to do a restore. Merge it. run it. Yeah, okay, I have tested this before. So this is the file, this is the restore image of this size. So we could restore it, of course, not on the original system, but on the Bareos server. But normally we don't want to do this by hand, and we have the web interface. Therefore, here I have been logged into the server, and I have created a helper script to help us with this user. Yeah, which does take a parameter, the client name, or in this case we have by default the name of the system we care about. So we know the name of the ISO file, and then we just run the B console to restore, makes the restore. So restore of this client from this file set, the most current version, and we only care about this file, this ISO file, and restore it to our Bareos director. And then we will wait until the restore is done. We will check if we really received the image file, make this preparation. And here this is specific to our system, so we copy it to our virtualization server and then use Virch to empty the CD-ROM, the virtual CD-ROM drive, and then update it to the ISO image so that we can boot from this. So let's do so. Okay. Restore is already running, and now we're waiting that it will be finished. Okay, it's done, it's there, it's copied over. Removing the ISO file hasn't worked because there wasn't ISO file, but updating it did work. So we now try to reboot this system. Yeah, okay, now we see the boot menu from Relax and Recover. This comes from the ISO file. If we would do nothing, then in 5 minutes the system would boot up from the hard disk like normally, but in this case we want to do the recovery of the system. So it boots up in ReaR mode, what ReaR has prepared. Let's give it a few seconds more. Yeah, here we are already in the ReaR preparation phase. Here it does the network configuration, which has also been DHCP on the original system. So if you would have used static configuration, then of course ReaR would also set it with the same static IP addresses. But yeah, it just does the same as in the production system. Okay, now we are able to log in. Not much we could do here, or it's a lot we could do here, but we only care about the ReaR recover. So let's do it in the normal mode. So then it starts with some checks, and with all these cases is if you do nothing, then in a few seconds it would do the default action. Here it detected the hard drives and says, oh, okay, I have detected the hard drive size looks okay, like the original one. Should we proceed? And if I just press enter, it will proceed. Okay, asking again, should I really wipe out the hard disk I found and recreate it? Yes, so again, press enter. Okay, it creates the hard disk, prepares it like it has been before, and then it asks, okay, if you also select automatic mode, then I will just restore from these clients with this file set the latest backup. Yeah, that's normally what we want. Mount local is where we have placed the hard disk to, and all the sub devices also. Of course, we could also select manual, then we get in B console, and we could also select some other backups that we have in place. But here we only care about the automatic and the latest backup we got. Okay, then it will start. It starts the restore job. It has a kind of progress bar here. It shows how many data it has already restored and how much it's run. The data, I think it's 2.5 gigabytes. So yeah, should be restored quite quickly. Just give it a few seconds more.
And if you would have used the the second menu point or fully automatic, then all of this would have happened automatically.
You can do also select an automatic mode, yes, which is no interaction. Okay, restore is already done. Now we are already again taking place, and make some final preparation, like matching the disk devices and especially creating the bootloader. It takes a while, but I'm quite confident it will soon succeed. We tested this before, so it should work. Okay, bootloader is in place. And we are done. We could do some manual checks at mount local. Yep, looks like a Linux system, looks like the one we had before. So we just do a reboot. Again, we get the ReaR menu from the ISO file. Yeah, in this case, we want to continue with booting from the hard disk. So I press enter here. Oh, now I get the bootloader from the system from the hard disk again, and he already continued here. Yeah, and gets to the normal booting process, and we are in there. Okay. For me, everything looks fine. So the latest backup has been restored. Yeah, you see now we have the latest restore. We are done here, and yeah, for me the system is up, running again, and we are fine.
Can explain the details of the Bareos configuration?
Sure. Yes, maybe I haven't shown this. On the director side, you configure the console for this specific client, give it a password, and most important part, to use the ReaR profile, like it's documented in our Bareos documentation in the ReaR section, and allow it only to access the one client. So the client that is called here client 1FD. And on the client side, you just configure the director and said, I don't want to use the default console on director, but I want to use a specific console named client1 console, like on the right side, you see this. And yeah, that's basically all. So with this configuration, the client got access to the director, but is only able to view his specific jobs and run the restore command.
Thank you. This is actually a typical example of one of ReaR's biggest problems around integration, which is how to carry over authentication information into the recovery system that allows unattended recovery of the files. So for different backup tools, we follow different approaches. Like here's the typical example of we carry a password along into the rescue image, which means that the rescue image should be treated as a secret and protected accordingly. By design, ReaR doesn't put any secrets in the rescue image, but if your backup software needs that, then it might happen. And the alternative is always you need to sign in manually on the recovery system before performing the actual recovery. So you'll need to choose between security and not having a secret in the rescue image and automation, which means you somehow have to enable the rescue image to do its job. There are also automated approaches where the rescue image comes up and then you connect to it via Ansible, for example, bring the secret with you to actually trigger the ReaR recover via Ansible or some other tooling. That's all things that I've seen already at customers being implemented. Before we go on, Christoph mentioned that Debian 12 comes with an ancient ReaR package. And yes, you're right, it sucks. The problem is there's no Debian maintainer for ReaR. So we, as the ReaR authors, don't have a way to kind of trigger an update of the ReaR package within Debian, which is why Debian and Ubuntu have old packages that some kind soul some time ago, like, once upon a time put in there. So if you happen to know somebody, or if you would like to do that yourself, who can help us with the Debian maintenance for ReaR, that would be a really nice thing. Maybe you happen to be a Debian maintainer. Here's a package that needs help. Maybe you know a Debian maintainer. Please connect us. This is really a problem I'm carrying around with myself already for years, and I couldn't find a solution. Anyway, let's go on. Here was the live demo. Here's another ReaR configuration example that's a bit more complex, and that's actually the example that I use to do ReaR development on my own. So you see I define an output URL, which is an NFS server, and I do, of course, PXE booting because that is the easiest. And then I just use the NetFS backup, which is ReaR's built-in backup method, which just dumps all the files somewhere else. And I put that in the same location. Firmware files, modules, and exclude MD5 sum verifications are all little hacks that make creating a rescue image much faster. Of course, at the expense of losing some functionality. And the last line shows you one of the many configuration items that we have that allow you to fine-tune ReaR's behavior during recovery. So this auto shrink line, for example, says that if the new hard disk is at least 80% as large as the old hard disk, just assume it's going to be okay and try to shrink the file systems during recovery so that it will just fit. And this is a good guess because typically our servers aren't entirely full. And this makes sure that if the replacement hard disk, which has nominally the same size but is a few gigs smaller, wouldn't break the recovery. So we automatically adjust the disk size. Another feature that might be useful for those of you who have a Linux laptop, or maybe you have a solo server standing somewhere, is the standalone disaster recovery for Linux. So we have a little bit more complex configuration that actually defines a USB storage media, which is actually any locally attached storage, to be used for the backup. And then we can attach the storage, format it for ReaR with the ReaR format command. We can, for example, create a UDEF rule, which has the effect that each time you plug in this piece of storage, ReaR will run automatically and perform a backup. In the end, it will beep and to signal you that it's done. And the effect you get from this is you plug in your backup hard disk into your laptop, it starts working, it beeps, you unplug it and put it back in the cabinet. And that's how Relax and Recover tries to, so to say, facilitate end user, please have a backup for my laptop scenarios. Or maybe you have, a remote office with a single server, and you ask the local branch manager or secretary to once a week connect the hard disk for backup. Fully automated, of course. Some advanced configuration. So when we, oops, okay, that was weird. When we create the rescue media, you can modify what happens. And one thing that you probably are going to use is copy as is, which tells ReaR to just copy over some things from your original system into the rescue media so that you can use it also there. Or procs, if you want to add additional programs, they will be copied over, and the libraries that the program uses will be also included automatically. One interesting feature that we added last year is the portable mode as an output. What it does is it skips creating the rescue media. And it gives you a small 5 megabyte archive, which contains ReaR itself and the recovery configuration. And the idea is that you have some other recovery system, let's say a live CD or your own custom proprietary special magic recovery system. And then you can use this portable archive to actually perform a ReaR disaster recovery if, of course, it contains all the tools that are necessary. We talked already about hardware. So if you know which hardware you plug in as a substitute, then you can use the files under etc ReaR mappings to pre-configure the answers for the hardware mappings. Otherwise, if you have 2 hard disks and 2 new hard disks, ReaR will ask you which hard disk to use for which old hard disk. Or if you have 5 network cards, it will ask you which new network card replaces which old network card, because obviously the software can't know which cable is plugged into which port in the back. But sometimes we know, for example, if you do a P2V migration, where you have 1,000 physical servers that you migrate into 1,000 virtual machines. And for that scenario, you can actually know all the hardware IDs of the target systems and plug them into ReaR upfront. And you will get a fully automated P2V solution. And I know data centers that perform large-scale migrations with the help of Relax and Recover. Sometimes you want to run something before, after the recovery or the rescue or whatever. So we have an ability to call anything that you configure when you want it. You can use DHCP if you don't want to use the static IP that was used on the source server. You can activate time synchronization. You can set an SSH or terminal password. By default, we don't have any passwords, and so on. There are a couple hundred settings that might be useful, so I recommend once scrolling through the default conf for inspiration, or also feel free to open a GitHub issue to ask a question. That is totally legitimate. Some internals, if you feel like contributing to ReaR, very important, ReaR is written in Bash, requiring Bash version 4. And everything you ever knew about Bash also holds true for ReaR, plus a few extras. Very important to keep the kind of directory structure in mind. So the configuration we touched, we have functions which define Bash snippets that we use in multiple places. We have workflows which define the commands that you can execute, like mkrescue is actually a so-called workflow. And then we have stages. Stages are a lot of small Bash scripts that you find under user share ReaR and stage name that are then executed in lexicographically order across all the subdirectories you find there. And this is actually the magic of ReaR as a framework. It is a multi-dimensional script merging tool, which allows you to put a little script into a specific path. And then based on stuff like operating system, architecture, backup, and output, it will assemble the list of scripts that need to be run. And that's how you essentially choose which actions should be taken. And the simulation mode that you can use with ReaR-S actually shows you the scripts that are being run. So if you have a reinstallation, try ReaR-S mkrescue. You will see exactly what it does, and you will understand how it's built. And finally, also ReaR now supports Docker for development purposes. The run in Docker tool is super useful to figure out quickly if a command has the same command line options across all Linux distributions that we need to support. And you would be laughing how many differences there are between Linux distributions and versions. So even stuff like LSOF has different versions that support different features across 20 years of Linux. Very, very frustrating when you need to develop for that. That's it, actually. Automated Linux disaster recovery with ReaR means relax and recover. We have you covered, and Bareos is a prime backup solution to work with ReaR to have you covered along the entire front of backup and recovery. And please keep in mind, no backup, no mercy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lomo, for all the details and the nice presentation. Yeah, we are now open for questions, feedback, whatever regarding the presentations.